Leopard geckos are that one species that I have a lot of trouble finding negative things to say about. They remind me a lot of those teeny tiny little soda cans, and I'm not making this analogy because it's the first thing that I saw on my desk, but it's because you can fit so many of those little cans in your fridge of all different flavors, and you can drink a lot of them in just one sitting, and you get to experience a lot of different tastes. And that kind of reminds me of leopard geckos, because I'm not one for collecting reptiles. I don't have anything crazy against people that trade and collect and are constantly switching up which animals they own personally, but leopard geckos seem like the best species that you can just kind of build and grow upon and have a pretty unique variety. And unlike that ginger ale that's staying the same forever, leopard geckos change a lot, even just with their pattern over the years. You get to kind of see just how they grow and develop into different animals, and you also have control over it, not over their design, but over their personality, because they are pretty easy to work with compared to most. There's plenty of, quote, beginner animals that aren't too hard to handle, aren't too hard to work with, etc., but leopard geckos are continually my favorite to get in. In fact, right now I'm only taking in leopard geckos because I'm limited on resources and space at the moment, so I'm literally only taking geckos, so I guess that kind of tells you that they're kind of on the top of my list. Before continuing, I asked on Twitter, describe leopard geckos in one word. I'm gonna see what we got. We got not a thought between those eyes. We got mid, we got lard, we got no think, that's 2 words, I said 1 word, thank you very much. We got derp, we got smiley, lick, lizard, instant. We got thick, we got happy, scream, serious, yellow, we got dummy, we got turd, we got low, we got gecko, and bite. Okay, that was terrible. I thought I might find some inspiration there. That didn't help my video at all. So back to working with them and handling them. Yeah, there are some pretty crazy geckos out there. Actually, a couple of the ones available right now at emeraldscales.com are very hard to handle, and they're just not a fan of it at all. However, it's still not like other animals that just make it very difficult to work with, even if they don't want to be handled. Personally, I really do not like dealing with snakes that just are unhappy. It's a pain, it's harder to work with them, and the bites hurt. I don't like being bit by animals in general. Leopard geckos, they can bite like any other animal, but one of the really nice things about them is it's very easy to tell when they're stressed and when they're probably gonna bite you. In my experience, they always give you a heads up, and it's a very simple wiggling of the tail and screaming. If a gecko starts flailing its tail and screaming at you, any organism on Earth pretty much knows what that means. When other animals, it can be a bit more difficult to pick up when they're stressed or uncomfortable, but it's just plain and simple with them, which I appreciate when working with them. The only time I do get bit is really when I'm having to get off some really rough stuck shed from certain geckos that come in. Their bites don't hurt the most. If I had to get bit by an animal, I'd probably pick a leopard gecko. I don't know if it's because my skin is just so soft and tender, but the moment they bite me, my blood just starts pouring out for some reason. I have to double bandage it because their teeth are sharp, but they're so tiny. It's really not too bad, and it heals up within 2 or 3 days. So compared to some snake bites, some that I've gotten, even from smaller snakes like ball pythons, can take a week to heal because their teeth are just bigger and longer and a bit more painful. Honestly, I'd rather get bit by a leopard gecko than a crested gecko too. Back to design-wise, there's just so many morphs, and they're not crazy expensive necessarily. Thankfully, the far majority of leopard geckos are captive bred, and they're not wild caught or taken out of their habitat anymore, because they're just so easy to breed that kind of everyone does it. One of the nice things that comes along with that is there's a very low likelihood of stuff like parasites within them. A lot of common pet lizards are wild caught, so parasites are just super prevalent and almost guaranteed when you get the animal. We have had a couple leopard geckos that somehow managed to still become parasitic, most likely because they were being fed insects that were from questionable sources that had parasites themselves. It's not too hard to treat. You can get prescribed parasite stuff from vets, so it's not the worst. And also, relating to my analogy, when it comes to their size, I'm fine just keeping adult leopard geckos in 20 gallons just by themselves. I feel like that's sufficient space, and you can easily have a shelf that size. If you kept stacking it up, you could fit leopard geckos all the way to the ceiling. It's very easy. I definitely don't like generally cohabbing them, but they're just nice, even with tubs. If you prefer using tubs or whatever, they're stackable and they don't have to be huge. So if you do want to kind of collect reptiles in a sense that you just want mini, I feel like leopard geckos are the one species where you could have all of the same species, because I think it's a bit weird when people have 20 ball pythons that are all kind of similar looking. But leopard geckos, to me, it makes more sense. But maybe that's just my weird bias, because nothing wrong with 20 ball pythons. I just don't want 20 ball pythons. And with the enclosures themselves, it's just super easy and super quick to set them up. You can whip something up within like 10 minutes at Target with all the supplies you need. You can do it with pretty much anything, and there's so many ways you can get creative and custom with it. They're so widely kept that I feel like people have really perfected how to care for them in captivity. So there's very little question, and they're so hardy. It's very hard to kill a leopard gecko. People still do it, I know, every day, but it's a lot more difficult. So you have that kind of buffer if you are brand new and you're scared, like, oh, well, I might make some mistakes, because you most likely will. Like, I feel like anyone does. And you get that chance where some, say geckos, if the humidity drops for just a bit too long, just a couple hours too long or a couple days too long, you might come back to a dead animal. But a leopard gecko, say you have a humid hide for it to help it shed and you forget to spray it 1 week, it's not going to kill your gecko. In the chance that it did get stuck shed, you could just take it off. When it comes to diet, I have trouble telling people how much to feed their geckos, because it really varies based on what size they're feeding and how often they eat and how much they eat in each sitting. But it really doesn't matter. I just free feed them, and if they start getting a bit too chubby, then I cut it back on food. There's a lot of different bugs you can use. Dubias are my favorite. You don't have to use dubias. Some people use mealworms, crickets, superworms, whatever. And some of them do like variety. I know that some are picky sometimes. There was one leopard gecko that no matter what we did, it would only eat superworms. And I don't like superworms, so that was annoying, but someone bought it, and thankfully they knew and were comfortable with only feeding superworms forever. So I'm glad I don't have to do that, because I don't have any superworms in the house anymore. I'm kind of jumping all over the place. I don't have a script for this video. Normally I just have an outline of like, oh, here's the bullet points I'm going to talk about, but we're just going with whatever comes to my head next. That is, with the patterns, there is a pretty ridiculous assortment. You've got a big color gradient from like purplish white all the way to bright orange, all the way to black, to a crisp, clean white, to yellows. And just that base color is only the beginning, because then on top you've got spots, splotches, big and small, stripes, completely patternless. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then their tails are a whole nother story. They can drop their tails. I've never had a leopard gecko drop its tail. There's a few cresties that I just came back to. I think there was one I just came back to and it had dropped it in its enclosure for some reason, like a couple years ago. They seem to be a bit more finicky with it. And there were a few that were actually necrotic on their tails, meaning the tails were basically dead. And that bacteria was, like, I got it from Craigslist, of course. I think it was 2 of them. And the bacteria, probably from mold or something, was building up towards their body. But I just got the gecko to drop its tail, and it completely stopped it. So, in theory, if you had a problem with a leopard gecko's tail, you could do the same. But the reason I mention that is it is pretty hard to get a leopard gecko to drop its tail. There's been many times where a gecko just slips out of my hand and I accidentally grab its tail and it doesn't care, really. I think I've gotten 3 in that actively did not have tails, and they're very easy to help them grow back. You just have to be careful and make sure they eat a lot, because that's where they store their fat and you need them to stay healthy. So as long as they're eating, it grows back completely by itself. It's not really an open wound. Like, at first it kind of is, but afterwards it instantly closes, so you don't really have to worry about infection or anything. And it's just, that's like the main problem people have, and it's not even that hard to deal with. Stuck shed is probably the other biggest problem, and it's a pain, but it's doable. I'm gonna sip on my teeny tiny soda. And in the chance that you do want to get into breeding, I definitely think it's a nice one to get you into it. I still haven't bred any reptiles, but they're pretty easy to pair up. They're pretty easy to monitor if you're worried about the male and female not getting along, because it's normally pretty instant if 2 geckos don't get along. They're not really the kind that's gonna appear to get along for a few weeks and then all of a sudden just lash out. They could, like any animal. They have changes in heart or whatever, but it is less likely. And they just about always lay 2 eggs, so it's easy to prepare. Like, say, a ball python, you might not know how to prepare for how many animals you're gonna end up with, but like most geckos, they just have 2. Easy there. So yeah, a lot of this applies to other gecko species, but leopard geckos are still the best because I said so. And it could kind of go 2 ways, because leopard geckos were my very first exotic lizard I kept. So maybe that they became my favorite because it was my first, or maybe it was my first because I just happened to pick out the perfect animal. And yeah, I get easily attached to them. I'll be honest. It's hard for me to get attached to reptiles nowadays. But leopard geckos, if I spend enough time with one, it's pretty easy, especially if you find a cute name for them or whatever. Yeah, it makes them more personal. They all act very similar for the most part, but you still notice those unique little quirks with each ones. And in a way, their little food preferences, although they can be annoying sometimes, it's almost, again, you can kind of personify them a little bit more because it's like, oh, well, they're picky. They only like this, and they hate that food. Kind of like humans. So if you're completely lonely, you need to pretend like you have more human connections. Just get a leopard gecko. Yeah, that's kind of everything. Being completely honest, I have a lot of trouble recommending people to get a lot of reptiles in general. There's a lot I just don't like about the husbandry of a lot of animals. I don't like the community around a lot of animals. I don't like the general sellers around a lot of animals. There's just a lot that I'm so turned off by and have such negative taste towards, where I'm like, just have trouble even suggesting getting a lot of reptiles nowadays. But leopard geckos have yet to be ruined within my mind. So what do you like about them? Am I overrating them or am I underrating them? And what are your experiences with them? Let me know. That's all I got. If you want to check out emerald scales, like I said, at the moment there are more listed, and they're the only thing I'm taking at the moment because they are very easy. They take minimal time, they take minimal space, and they're the perfect one as I'm in between these houses for me to still help out and rehome. That's it. I'm Alex. Thanks for watching.